ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the channel. I'm your host narrator, and today we have a story that I'm here to share with you guys. It's called The Princess of Sweet Kingdom. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Without further ado, let's jump right into this story.
Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there was a place of sweets and sparkles. This place was called Sweet Kingdom, and it was ruled by the royal family of sweets. There lived a lovely princess named Rosalina. She was the king's only daughter, who had pink hair and was gentle and kind to all. She would play with the village kids and will help out the townspeople who were in need of help. Everything was perfect and in harmony, with all of the sparkles shining. But on one terrible day, the Queen of Sweets had fallen ill and was in bed rest, as the king searched for a cure to help his poor wife. While the king was riding along in the forest, he came across a woman who was beautiful with her green eyes and brown hair. The woman claimed that she can cure the queen with her medical skills, but the queen put her to the test. Once he came back to the castle with the woman riding on the same horse as him, little Rosalina watched the mysterious woman help the queen, but it was too late. The queen, at her last breath, told her child to keep smiling and help out the people of this land from darkness. In that moment, the queen had passed away, leaving the little princess all alone, left to cry. For the past few days, since the queen died, the king let the mysterious woman stay in the palace. Rosalina asked the lady why she was staying here. The king looked mad at his daughter, but calmed down. He took Rosalina in his arms and said that she'll be her new mother once they get married next month. To Rosalina's surprise of what her father said, to the lady came in, and to the king introduced her as Lottie, and how she'll be her mother. Right before she could speak up, the king was called to see a problem that was going on in the night hall. When the king left, it was just Lottie and Rosalina in the drawing room alone. Lottie started to talk to the little princess, and how from now on she'll go into princess lessons starting tomorrow morning, and how she was going to be the next queen. As Lottie grew closer to little Rosalina and whispered something in her ear, making her scared, standing there next to her, she ran out of the room to find her father, but thinking of what Lottie had said to her, she locked herself in her room to cry in her pillow. Later that day, Rosalina begged her father not to marry Lottie. Right then, Lottie was crying to the king of how she understood that she felt heartbroken about the princess, saying that she doesn't want her as her mother. As they pulled away from Rosalina, who was now confused of what Lottie had just said, as the king hugged Lottie, her face changed, and as the king left to get some water for her, Lottie ripped her dress, messed up her hair, along punching herself and putting a blade on the floor. She let out a scream, leaving Rosalina stunned of what she did. When the king and the guards came in, she cried out to the king and claimed that Rosalina was trying to kill her. With what the king heard, right before Rosalina could explain what happened to her father, blinded in rage, Rosalina was dragged to the castle's dark room and locked inside. Rosalina was helpless on the ground. Her father said that from now on that this will be her room, and was kept in here till it was the last of her days. She cried and begged her father to hear her out of her side of the story, but the king locked up the door and threw away the key. Soon after Rosalina was locked up in her new room, News soon spread across the kingdom and town about the king's new wife and how they heard that Rosalina attacked the new queen. People were still confused about the story, and this isn't something that Rosalina would do. For the past few years, Rosalina undergo the horrible lessons her stepmother ordered, and wasn't allowed to leave her room without the queen's guards watching her step. But people in the castle bullied Rosalina for her attack on the queen. Over the years, Rosalina had a little sister named Cora, who was the heir to the throne. Rosalina couldn't do anything to stop her father's order from taking her birthright, but now was a princess that would watch her kingdom turn against her for something she didn't do. Now, Rosalina is 18 years old and was sipping tea in the castle garden with her maid Lily. Lily was Rosalina's maid since she was little, but she believed her because everyone had fallen under her stepmother's hands and power. But Lily didn't like the new queen because of how selfish she turned out to be when the king's not around. While enjoying the garden, the queen had summoned her to the throne room. With horror in her eyes, she knew that she had to obey the order. Right as she got to the throne room, she was surprised to see Bureau, her childhood friend and first love. As she bowed to her father and her stepmother, announced that Bureau would marry to Cora as the future king of Swedes. Before Rosalina heard, and she turned to Bureau hugging a happy Cora, thanking her father and mother for letting her marry her true love. But as the two turned to see Rosalina on the floor, tears falling down her face, Bureau ordered the guards to drag her back to her room. To see a smirk on her sister's face as she walked back to her room, to see Lily waiting for her. Once inside her room, she broke down and cried into Lily's arms. About what happened in the throne room, Lily was shocked to hear what happened to Rosalina. She comforted Rosalina that night, but Rosalina couldn't sleep and looked outside to see the kingdom sparkles were flying away. With the fear of seeing all the sweets losing their sparkles, she noticed that they were flying north from here. She quickly opened the map, looking to see what goes up north. There was a land far up north that was exiled from everyone. It was the land of despair. The land of despair was ruled by a powerful and tyrant, Emperor Sage, who was the ruler of the Despair Land. The next morning in the throne room, the townspeople came to the king and told him that the sweets in the kingdom have lost their sparkle, and how they were great and tasteless. After hearing what was going on in the town, Rosalina knew that she couldn't stand by locked up in her room. Rosalina rushed back to her room and started packing her bag for her journey to the land of despair. While Rosalina was finishing packing up for her trip, she knew she couldn't tell anyone about this. Once night came across the land, now was the perfect time to go. As she got into her disguise, tied her hair up, grabbed the map and her bag, and snuck out through the window. As she got to the ground quickly, hid in the shadows of the castle, as Rosalina snuck out the castle and making it all the way to the end of the village and town. She stopped in the middle of the road, looking back at the castle, remembering her mother's words to protect the people from the darkness. She took her mother's words to heart, turned around, and left Sweet Kingdom. The next morning, the royal family was eating their breakfast. Lily came rushing in, causing the queen to spill her tea on the ground. The king asked why Lily was here and not with Rosalina. Lily told them that she was gone and wasn't in her room. The king asked if this was a way for his daughter to get his attention. Then it is not funny. Lily asked the king to go to her room to see. Lottie's face was red and yelled for the guards to come with them to scold Rosalina for her behavior. But once they entered her room, the king came in and noticed how small the room was and asked why she didn't get a bigger room like Cora. Lily said that it was your highness's order to lock her up for the misunderstanding with the queen that was never able to see you about. With what the king heard and how his oldest daughter's living conditions were, the queen grew more mad and ordered the guards to search the room. After some time, they didn't find Rosalina. The king grew worried about his child, but he noticed the window open. A thought came to his mind that his daughter was kidnapped. But as for Rosalina, she was right by the river, drinking water and taking a break from walking. Looking at the map, she was still a long way to go. Right before she could get on her way, there was a little blue fluffy thing that came out of the water. As she got a closer look at it, it was a candy bear, and it had dark blue tips on its head. The little creature looked weak and tired. She opened her first aid and healed the little bear. For a while, the bear woke up and was looking at Rosalina, who was sitting right next to her. The candy bear's name was Honey, and she was a pixie. She told her that her kingdom was in trouble, but she got hurt while protecting her friends who were taken. Rosalina was asked for help. She agreed to Honey's request, and as they ran off to the Pixie Kingdom, after some time, they made it to Pixie Kingdom. After some time, they made it to the kingdom, but everything was trashed and the buildings were destroyed. Some of the pixies came out of hiding and saw Honey coming. As the fairies gathered around Honey and asked if she was okay, she confirmed that she was okay and brought some help. As they looked behind Honey, they saw Rosalina standing there. They were a bit scared at first, but they'd never seen a human so close. Some of the fairies went back into hiding. Rosalina asked if something was wrong with Honey and the other pixies for why they were hiding. Honey said that it was rare to see a human up so close after what happened to the previous intervention with the human. Rosalina asked what happened to the previous human that came across them. Honey said that things didn't end well for the human who tried to take the pixies back towards his own village to sell. The pixies queen erased his memories with her magic to prevent it from happening. Speaking of the queen, Honey asked the rest of her friends of what happened to the queen. They said they don't know, and some of the despair went to the castle. They were scared to go in, so we waited for you so we can go and check together. Honey's face looked scared and worried, and that she had Rosalina to follow her to the castle. Once they got to the castle, the palace was a wreck. The guards were on the floor. Some were taking care of the injured. Honey asked what happened to the queen. They say the queen was still in the throne room, but hasn't came out since the battle. Rosalina stepped forward to ask if it would be okay to help with anything. The guards were a bit skeptical, but wasn't sure to trust her. Looking into her eyes convinced them. They took her to the throne room where the queen was. Once the door was open, the queen was laying on the floor, was all hurt. Rosalina rushed and healed the queen at that moment, and asking if we could put the queen in her chambers until she wakes up. The guards guided her to the queen's chambers and put her down, and left the queen to rest. In the castle, Rosalina helped the fallen soldiers and cleaning up the kingdom. For the past 2 days, everything was fixed as it was before, and the queen woken up from her deep sleep. The queen summoned Rosalina and Honey to the palace. As the queen got a closer look up, she thanked Rosalina and honey for helping the soldiers and her subjects. The queen introduced herself as Cherry, the queen of the pixies. Rosalina introduced herself as the princess of sweets. Queen Cherry looked confused and asked if the king had a second child. Rosalina confirmed that her stepsister, Cora, is the king's second daughter of her stepmother. Queen Cherry looked shocked and asked what happened to her mother. Rosalina told her what had happened to her mother and how she suddenly fell ill and passed away, and how her father remarried so quickly to a lady she didn't know. With Rosalina's expression, the queen asked to speak with her in private. Once everyone left the throne room, Queen Cherry asked about what really happened, and she could tell that on her face something wasn't right about talking about her stepmother. Rosalina broke down and told her what happened, how her stepmother framed her and locked her up in the dark room for all her childhood, and how her first love is now getting married to her stepsister. Plus, she never got a moment with her father, and was never outside her room without her stepmother's guards. Queen Cherry looked so enraged by the words that came out of Rosalina's mouth. She comforted the child, who was crying in her arms, letting all her emotions out. Queen Cherry offered her to stay here in Pixie Kingdom as long as she liked as her daughter. Rosalina looked shocked at the queen's words and accepted her request, as she was given a bigger room, respect, plus people who she could trust. She was now the princess of the Pixies and of Sweet Kingdom. For the past few days, Rosalina adapted very well to her new home and got along with her new mother. Rosalina asked her mom if she could learn magic. The queen asked why she would want to learn magic, knowing how hard the training is and the spells. Rosalina told her mother about the journey that she was on to protect all the sweets in this land that were turning gray and tasteless. With how the queen, she was shocked to hear those words. She thought of what had happened the past 2 months. Queen Cherry told Rosalina that the bakery here in the town, all the sweets turned gray and tasteless and had lost their sparkles. Rosalina asked about the sparkles were. Queen Cherry explained that the sparkles were the happiness and love in the sweets that can make them taste good, being shared with and eaten. But when all the sparkles of the sweets were gone, they became tasteless and bad, and the bakeries here in Pixie Kingdom had to be closed. Rosalina told the queen that the sparkles that she saw in Sweet Kingdom were flying north of the land of despair. The queen looked shocked and scared when she said that the land of despair. Rosalina asked why she looked so terrified. Queen Cherry told her that the land of despair was ruled by Emperor Sage, who was as cruel and a powerful tyrant. With all the sparkles that he gathered, he became more powerful. The more he consumed, he'll be unstoppable. We were thinking about going to the land of despair to fight him, but when we got intel back from the report, it would be impossible to stop him unless someone with pure magic and the love for sweets can stop him. Rosalina understood the queen's words and asked again if it would be okay for her to learn magic to help save this land from despair. The queen looked at Rosalina with ambition and the sparkle in her eyes. The queen agreed to her request. Right then, the queen had summoned Pixie Kingdom's wizard to help teach Rosalina magic. Right then, Rosalina's lessons of magic started. It was a long process, and it took a lot of time to progress a lot of magic. For the past 2 years of learning, She was as powerful and mighty after learning magic. Once her training was complete, the wizard and the queen gifted her with a staff to help her with her magic and an outfit that goes with it. Once her training was complete, there would be a big party held for her accomplishing her training. Rosalina couldn't wait for the party. She wanted to do something to express her gratitude for those who helped her for the past 2 years. She remembered how her mother would make special cakes with frosting and strawberries, shining like stars, and it tastes so good. Rosalina asked the castle chef if it would be okay to borrow the kitchen. The castle chef agreed to her request and showed her everything in the kitchen and how it worked. Once the chef left the kitchen, Rosalina got started with the strawberry shortcake. That would be big enough for the entire kingdom. Once the cake was made, she put a little magic in it to give it more sparkles and a delicious taste. The cake was 12 feet tall and was ready to be served to the entire kingdom. Right as it was about to be time for the party, Rosalina opened the door, rolling a giant cake, to everyone's surprise of how big it was. The queen had asked how she was able to bake this, since it isn't turning gray. Rosalina said she added some magic in it to give it a little more sparkle. One of the pixies asked if it would be okay to eat it. Rosalina sliced the cake and gave it to all the pixies. As they all took a bite of the cake, and how they were all enjoying the delicious taste it was and the smiles, the queen took a bite of the cake and asked how she was able to make it since it wasn't turning gray or tasteless. Rosalina explained that she added her magic into the batter and how it wasn't causing it to be tasteless or gray. While everyone was enjoying the party, a big gust of wind came through the town. It was a creature with wings that flew over everyone. As the creature landed in front of Rosalina and the queen, something descended off its back. It was a man who wore a mask with black horns and white hair. While walking up to the two, he asked how they were able to eat sweets without it going gray and tasteless. Rosalina explained that she added her magic and love into the cake. When the man heard the word love, he threw a tantrum, knocking over the tables, causing a lot of pressure around him. Rosalina ordered everyone to go inside the palace and to stay there till it was all over. As the pixies were scared, they went inside the palace quickly. Rosalina asked what the man came for and who he was. The mysterious man introduced himself as Emperor Sage himself, the ruler of the land of despair. Rosalina asked why the emperor had came during a time of celebration. But the flick of the emperor's hand, all the sparkles in the cake went towards him and engulfed him. He became stronger and powerful and started chanting a spell over the pixies. Rosalina turned around to see the queen and all the pixies in a state of despair. Looking around, there was purple smoke around the pixies. Rosalina tried to get some sense into the queen, and did the same for the guards, but no one could hear her. Rosalina turned to the emperor and asked what he had done to the pixies. The emperor claimed that he put them under his despair curse, and how the spell couldn't be broken unless he was defeated by someone who had a pure magic and a love for sweets. Within that moment, Rosalina grabbed her staff and cast one of her spells, releasing one of the pixies from the emperor's curse. Looking at what the emperor just witnessed, he grew more enraged, and he flew up to the sky, casting over a massive amount of despair over the entire land. Everything around Rosalina was covered in a purple darkness. As for some of the pixies, they were able to break through the spell and were immune to the curse. The emperor flew down towards Rosalina and challenged her to a battle. If she could defeat him, then all the despair in the world would be gone, and he too would disappear. But there was a condition. that the Emperor's face grew serious and more darker. If he wins the battle, then Rosalina would be his prisoner forever, in the despair and the darkest part of it. Rosalina accepted the terms of the battle, and right then the Emperor was gone, flying with his creature. Right before he left, he gave her the directions of where the battle will be taking place, at Sweet Kingdom. Rosalina was shocked to hear the location. It was her home kingdom. Right then, the Emperor flew away. Rosalina turned to the pixies who were under the curse effect and asked if they were okay. The pixies said they were okay, but a little tired. They asked what happened to the rest of the pixies, along with the queen who was under the despair curse. Rosalina explained what happened, and how the battle would be taking place at her home kingdom. The pixies asked if it would be okay for her to go back, knowing what had happened to her back there. She said that it would be okay, but questioned why he would pick her home kingdom instead of the land of despair, where he ruled. The pixies asked maybe if she could go check out the land of despair to see why he would change locations instead of his domain. Rosalina agreed to the pixies' request and asked them if it would be okay for her to go to the land of despair, leaving them behind. They said they will be okay and they have to take care of the rest of the pixies who are under the influence of the curse, and said for her not to worry about it, but to defeat him will help ease up the curse and get rid of it. Right before Rosalina departed the pixie kingdom, a pixie handed her a bag of food and a map along with a cape and staff. Rosalina thanked the pixies for what they'd done for her for the past 2 years and set off to the land of despair. For a while, the place that she had called home was now in trouble. She started picking up the pace, running towards the land of despair that was waiting for her. On her way, she noticed that the dark purple clouds of the mist was in the passing houses along with the villages that she traveled to get to the land of despair. But when she got to the land of despair, the place was filled with people that didn't notice her walking. While looking around, the people became lifeless zombies under a desperation influence. She got to the palace of the Emperor's sage. Holding her staff ready for battle, she stepped inside the abandoned castle to see the guards, butlers, and maids, the entire staff just standing there, lying on the ground, not moving a muscle. While walking deeper into the castle, she noticed that a picture of a boy around her age with white hair and yellow eyes were questioned why the Emperor would take over someone else's castle or their kingdom. But then a thought came across her mind. What if the boy in the painting was the Emperor himself, cleansed in the darkest part of the despair that locked him away? While searching through the castle, through answers, she came across a room with its broken doors. Looking inside, the coast was clear, but a wreck awaited her. As she stepped inside, there was a crown on the floor, along with a photo of the boy from the painting, along with 2 other people. Guessing by the photo it was his family. Looking around the room, she found a diary on the floor, pages ripped out besides one. The page contained something sad about the little boy's parents had passed away in a carriage accident, leaving him all alone. After reading the diary's page, she guessed that the Emperor's sage was in despair at the loss of his parents, that there was something else far too within the room. It looked like a birthday cake smashed on the ground that said 19th Happy Birthday, Prince Chris. Looking at the cake on the ground, it looked like it was a birthday celebration that had gone wrong. As Rosalina left the room, she came across the throne room, where a table was centered with a picture of the prince and his family. Taking the picture in hand, her tears fell on it, thinking of how the prince must have felt having to celebrate his 19th birthday alone, despaired, and broken-hearted. Thinking about how he felt, Rosalina's mother came to her mind and how she'd celebrate birthdays with people who didn't have anyone to celebrate with. Rosalina's mother, the previous queen, would make cakes for the birthdays of people who cheer up those in despair. Thinking about her mother's words, she put the picture down and left the castle. Looking around, she promises that she will free Prince Curious from his despair. Walking away from the land of despair, and made it into a little village where the despair hadn't gone to. While at a restaurant, she overheard one of the merchants was talking about how Sweet Kingdom was under lockdown, with its purple big cloud of smoke surrounding it, and how they had to change and turn around because of how dangerous it was. Hearing what was going on, Rosalina remembered the location and how he had gotten there and decided to spread his despair everywhere in Sweet Kingdom. Rosalina got up and asked the merchant about Sweet Kingdom. They said that they had to turn around and come back and were unable to make any deliveries to Sweet Kingdom, and how the people were just standing there doing nothing because a lot of the purple smoke was surrounding them. They said it was creeping them out and they ran back here. One of the merchants said the same thing had happened to the other kingdom up north. The merchant asked what happened up north. The merchant said that it was the prince's 19th birthday, but something had gone wrong and purple smoke arose from the prince's room. And the merchant ran out of the kingdom, noticing that everyone fallen under the influence of despair. Rosalina's thoughts of the merchants, sharing their conversation, but thanked them for telling her, and hurried and left. Grabbing her things, she dashed out of the town and started heading back to Sweet Kingdom. Standing outside on a hill of the kingdom, she noticed that there was a lot of purple smoke in the town's homes and shops in the castle. Standing in the place that she now saw, clutched in darkness, the children weren't playing, the people laying on the ground. Right before she could enter the castle, there was rose bushes surrounding it, closing off the entrance. Rosalina casted a spell to sharpen her staff as she was cutting her way in. As she was inside, she could see her maid Lily laying right by her favorite flower bush. Lily was in a state of despair. She tried to get some sense into her, waking her up, but it was no use. Rosalina picked up Lily and laid her in the gazebo. Right as she was about to leave to head to Emperor Sage, she promised Lily that she would free her from this despair. Rosalina walked towards the castle. Going inside the main entrance, she could see her stepmother's guards laying on the ground. She noticed that one of the rooms was open. Getting a closer look, she could see Cora and her fiancé in a state of despair on the ground. Rosalina went up closer to see the two and noticed a piece of paper right next to them. Getting a closer look, it was their wedding invitation for their wedding. Rosalina remembered the day that her first love chose her sister over her, becoming powerless and cast it aside. She stepped back of the room, leaving the two there. As she got to the entrance of the throne room, she opened it to see the emperor sitting on her father's throne, and her dad on the pillar against it, and her stepmother on the ground with her crown not being on her head. She rushed to her father, trying to wake him up, but it was no use. Rosalina put her father down against the pillar, walking up to Emperor Sage. As the two standing face to face, Emperor Sage released a cloud of smoke towards Rosalina, but Rosalina blocked it off with her magic. She could not attack him with her magic all the way through. Throughout the battle, the two were putting all their magic into this battle, causing the entire place to be a disaster. Right as the Emperor rushed with his fist in a black smoke, Rosalina had her staff engaged with white magic against his punch. A powerful pressure between it caused the two to separate. It did cause Rosalina to get down on a knee and exhausted, catching her breath, but the Emperor stood there, not taking in the exhaustion. Rosalina then put her hands on her staff, creating a most powerful spell on herself, causing her to float above the ground, her hair undone in its ponytail covered in bruises and scars. And she powered up. The Emperor did the same as Rosalina, but before she could make any move, she casted a spell releasing her father and her stepmother and everyone in the castle to be freed from the despair curse. The Emperor wasn't pleased by all the darkness being released. The Emperor casted a dark beam towards her. Rosalina dodged it and counterattacked him. Rosalina ordered her father and stepmother to get everyone outside the castle. Rosalina then rushed towards the Emperor with a powerful force of magic, causing him to fly towards the castle wall. Rosalina, looking at the wall that was no longer there behind the throne, was destroyed and flew out to see the Emperor getting out of the rubble from the castle wall. The Emperor grew furious with what Rosalina did. Within that moment, he casted a massive amount of despair energy, causing Rosalina to fall to her knees. Rosalina was surrounded by darkness. There was no one there, but she could hear a crying child. That child was her younger self. Her younger self was sitting there crying out for her mom and her father. Rosalina hugged her younger self, telling her not to be sad, but to be happy, that she'll meet wonderful people, and how she would be free from her evil stepmother and her father's control. Her younger self looked at her and asked if she was happy. Thinking about the question, she smiled and said yes, that she was happy. Thinking about her mother's words once again at that moment, she said that they were never alone, because my mother was watching over me, doing great things, meeting new people and friends along the way. With that being her final answer towards her younger self, she smiled and said thank you, and disappeared. As Rosalina got up and woke up back to reality, she got up and repelled, holding her staff, casting a spell that was never created. And within that moment, she struck the Emperor, and all that left was a roar. The darkness that once spread it across the two kingdoms, Pixie Kingdom, were no longer there. Rosalina and the Emperor were somewhere else, far away from the people, as they surrounded by nothing but light. Everyone outside the castle saw what happened to Rosalina and the Emperor. The king rushed over to the site, but saw nothing of the remains of his eldest daughter gone. The king let out a cry that was heard by everyone. Rosalina's stepmother and stepsister, plus Bureau, at the side where she was last seen, standing behind the king, crying on the ground that his daughter was gone. Right then, Rosalina's mother appeared in front of her father and his new wife. Rosalina's mother called out for him, seeing his wife standing in front of him, hugging her but she forcibly let go of his embrace. He asked why this happened and what had happened to his wife and daughter, that they were both gone. Rosalina's mother, standing in front of her father's newly family, slapped him across the face, leaving everyone in awe of what she just did. She scolded all of them for what they did not believe Rosalina's words over someone who manipulated everyone because of her sweet words and act. The king turned to his wife and asked what she meant by that. Lottie, standing there, denied everything that she just said was a lie. Rosalina's mother silenced her and told her what had happened that day, and how Lottie had faked everything, accusing of Rosalina of something she didn't do, and all the torment and pain that she had to go through growing up. The king was enraged at what his wife did. The king went over to Lottie and slapped her and scolded her on how could she have done this to Rosalina. Then the king declared that now Lottie would no longer be the queen of Sweet Kingdom. Turning to Cora and her fiancé, standing in shock of what happened, Cora was stripped from her title as princess and as heir to the throne. Cora begged her father not to do this, but the king turned away, leaving Cora in the dust. Thinking about what her mother just did, Cora yelled at her mother for what she did. Her mother was crying and begging her husband not to do this, but the king didn't hear a peep from her and ordered her and Cora to be thrown out of the palace. But in Pixie Kingdom, Queen Cherry and all of the other pixies were free from the curse of despair. Queen Cherry asked about Rosalina's whereabouts, and the pixies that weren't under the curse told her that she went to go fight the emperor in the Kingdom of Sweets. Queen Cherry ordered everyone to head out to the Kingdom of Sweets to see Rosalina. They did not waste time, and they headed towards the Kingdom of Sweets. As for everyone, and in the land of despair, all the dark clouds and purple mist were gone. People started to wake up, along with the children who were up from their long nap had asked their parents what happened. The castle's maids and butlers looked around from their long sleep and started looking for the prince, who he was not there. But as for Rosalina and Chris, they were somewhere else, away from the destruction. Being surrounded in light, Rosalina could see Prince Chris sitting on the ground, clutching his heart, crying in tears of despair. As Rosalina got closer to Chris noticed Rosalina sitting in front of him, holding out a napkin and wiping his tears. Rosalina asked Chris if he was okay. Looking at him in despair, Chris said he was not fine nor okay. Rosalina asked what was making him in despair. Chris looked surprised to hear her words and told her the loss of his parents not being there with him to celebrate his 19th birthday, causing him to be in despair and surrounded by darkness. Chris apologized to Rosalina for all the trouble that he caused. He wanted everyone to feel the despair and sadness that he felt. Rosalina hugged Chris and embrace that made Chris's tears fall on his shoulder. Rosalina said for him to let it all out. Sitting there as Chris cried his heart out into Rosalina's arms, for some time he calmed down. And as for Rosalina, who stood up, holding out her hand towards Chris, saying that it was time to go home, to the people that were waiting for him. As Chris was mesmerized by Rosalina's beauty and the words of encouragement, causing him to blush as she took Rosalina's hands and stood up, the two, lost in each other's eyes, hugged in a tight embrace. Then they were out of the light away from the darkness of despair. But we're in the sky, above everyone. Down in the crowd, Lily noticed Rosalina in an embrace of someone else. She called out to the king to look up, seeing Rosalina in the sky hugging someone coming down towards him. Rosalina and Chris were still in their tight embrace, came down from the sky with everyone seeing them descend. Once they were on the ground, Rosalina's father hugged her, crying and checking around Rosalina to see if she was hurt. Rosalina was shocked to hear her father and seeing what he was doing. Her father got on his knees and apologized for not noticing his daughter's pain and the torment that she had been through all those years. Rosalina hugged her father and accepted his apology. The king hugged his daughter, who was safe and defeated the darkness. And that very moment, everyone surrounded Rosalina, apologizing for not believing her. Lily was crying and hugging Rosalina in a tight hug. As everyone was smiling and cheering, the pixies flew into the castle. Queen Cherry noticed Rosalina and rushed over and hugged her in an embrace. Everyone was shocked to see pixies everywhere. They gathered around Rosalina, hugging her and thanking her for saving them and their kingdom. But in the commotion, Rosalina's father asked who the boy was right next to her. Rosalina told everyone that this was Prince Chris, or was known as the Emperor's Sage. Queen Cherry was shocked to see Prince Chris, who was the Emperor, the one who ruled the land of despair. Prince Chris told everyone what had happened, and how he turned into a cruel tyrant, apologizing to everyone for all the trouble that he caused. Everyone accepted his apology and understood his feelings. But as he turned to Rosalina, walking towards her and kissing her on her cheek, shocking everyone and Rosalina, but she was happy. She took the prince's hands into an embrace that made his heart happy and filled with love. After the battle between Rosalina and the Emperor, everything in Sweet Kingdom changed. There was no despair. The sparkles were returned to the sweets, causing all the bakeries to open up again. And the sweets were no longer gray or tasteless. With all the joy and happiness in the kingdom, Rosalina had claimed her title as heir to the throne back from her stepmother and stepsister. Her first love tried to convince her to give him another chance, but Rosalina wasn't having that, and Cora had feelings for him, so Rosalina introduced Cora to her childhood friend, Biro. As the two worked things out, they too fell in love as well. But as for Lottie, she was going through all the karma that she had gotten over the years, making Rosalina's life hard. But that's not the ending of this story. As for Rosalina and Prince Chris, the two got married and are living happily ever after. The end.